Today we are going to do several different skills. We're going to review our skills. The first skill that we're going to talk about is bar graphs. A bar graph gives us data, which is information in an organized way. It makes it easier to read the bar graph. Okay, we have a bar graph that we are going to solve together. The title of this bar graph is How Long Can Animals Hold Their Breath? Okay, so I know that when I first have a bar graph, what I have to do is I have to put my information at the end of each bar. So that is what I'm going to do at the end of my bars. The first one is wells, and I know my scale is counting by twos. It's very important to always look at your scale. So in the middle of 18 and 20 would be 19. And dolphins hold their breaths for 12 minutes. And seals hold their breaths for 7 minutes because 7 is in the middle of 6 and 8. Okay, now I'm going to move to my question. If a seal holds its breath 9 times in one day, how many minutes does the seal hold its breath? Well, I know that a seal will hold its breath for 7 minutes. So if it holds its breath 9 times, 9 times 7, and I know my facts, so 9 times 7 is 63. So the correct answer is the seal will hold its breath 63 minutes that day. All right, let's move on to our next bar graph. Okay, let's look at our title. This is Fruit Choice of Children. And of course, I've got to label all of my bars. Okay, that one is 8. Apples is 5. Now, you notice there are 2 different colors. There's pink and orange. Well, pink and orange represents 2 different grade levels, 5th grade and 6th grade. So I'm going to continue labeling. Orange is, for pink, it's 4. And for 6th grade, it's 7. Grapes would be 6 votes, and for 5th grade, and for 6th grade, it's going to be 5 votes. Okay, now I'm going to read my question. It says, how many more? And how many more always tells me to subtract. How many more apples and grapes were picked than oranges by 5th graders? So I've got to take my apples and grapes and group them together. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to take the number of apples and grapes. But if you notice in my question it says for 5th graders. And I look in my key and 5th graders are pink. So I'm only looking at the information that's in pink. And there are, for apples, 8 kids that picked apple. And there are 6 5th graders that picked grapes. So I'm going to add those together since they're in a group. 8 plus 6 is 14. But how many more was subtract? So how many more than oranges? So 5th grade, I'm going to look, there are 4. So I know 14 minus 4 equals 10. So there are 10 more apples and grapes were picked by 5th graders than oranges. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to a new skill, and this one is tables. Okay, y'all do a great job of figuring out the pattern or what to do. How do I get from one side of my table to the other side of my table? But at the bottom, there's all these multiple choice answers, and they always confuse you. So we're going to stop that confusion today. I'm going to teach you 2 little tricks, and all we have to do is write sentences. So we're going to start off by figuring out what is the pattern. What am I doing in my table? And I know that I'm looking at 3 and to 10, 5 to 50, 7. I know that on all of these, I need to multiply by 10, and that's going to get me this number in this column. Okay, but what if I have to work backwards? What's opposite of multiplying? I'm going to have to divide. So I know if I say 30 divided by 10, that would give me 3. And that's going to be true all the way down my table. 70 divided by 10 would equal 7. So 50 divided by 10 equals 5. Okay, and that's the number in the top column. So now I'm going to write a sentence. Okay, and my sentences will always use the words at the top of my table. They're always going to use these words. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to look is on this side. These small numbers are my number of teams. So I'm going to say teams. What am I doing with that number? What am I doing with the number 3? 3 times. So I'm going to say the number of teams times 10. Teams times 10 equals or is the number of players. And I'm using abbreviations, T and P. Okay, so that's one sentence. Teams times 10 equals players. So my next sentence is going to have to be, if I need to work backwards. Okay, so I'm going to start with this number, okay, all these big numbers, and that is the number of players. So players divided by 10 equals what? The number of teams. Okay, once you get your two sentences written, now we have to compare what we wrote in our sentences right here to the multiple choice. Okay, and if it has the word is, that means equals. Okay, so the number of soccer teams is equals, so soccer teams equals, this is my T equals 10 times the number of players. Did I say 10 times players? No, that's players divided by. So A cannot be correct. Okay, let's go to B. The number of players is, so players is 10 times the number of players. No, I need a group of teams and players, so that cannot be right. All right, C, the number of players times 10 is the number of teams. So I'm going to look at teams equals 10 players divided by 10. And this says players times 10. Well, if I take the number of players, 30, times 10, that's not going to get me 3. So C is not the answer. Okay, now we're going to look at D. The number of soccer teams is, so teams is or equals the number of players divided by 10. Look, I have an answer that matches one of the sentences that I wrote. So the correct answer is choice D. Okay, now we've got that done, we're going to move to our next table. Okay, set A and set B. So I've got to find my pattern, okay? I'm going to start with my small numbers and try to work to my big numbers, okay? So I know that 8 times what is 24? 6 times what is 18? 3 times what is 9? I think the answer is 3. So if I say 8 times 3, that's going to equal 24, which is on the other side. And that's true all the way down, because 3 times 3, let me fix that, 3 times 3 equals 9. And then 2 times 3 equals 6. And the same, 6 times 3 equals 18. So I'm going to go ahead and write my first sentence with what I just did. Okay, write my sentence. What is this? I took the number in set B, so I'm just going to put B. What did I do with that B? That 8. I multiplied times 3. B times 3 is or equals the number in set A. Okay, that's one way to solve our problem. And if I have to work backwards, I'm going to go ahead and write that. I know the opposite operation for multiplication is dividing. So if I start with my big number, 24 divided by 3 equals 8. Same for all these numbers. 18 divided by 3 equals 6, 9 divided by 3. So I'm just going to put a big divide by 3 on this side. So I'm going to write my sentence now. I'm going to take, what number is that? It's the number in set A. What did I do with that number in set A? Set A divided by 3 is equal to the number in set B. Okay, now I'm going to read all of these and see which one matches one of these choices. The number in set B is equals, so B equals 3 times the number in set A? No, because if I said B equals, that would have to be divide. So it can't be choice A. All right, let's look at choice B. The number in set A times 3. A times 3 equals B. No, that's dividing again. So these are very tricky. You have to make sure you read very carefully. The number in set B is 20 more. Well, I didn't even add, so that's not a choice. Okay, let's look at choice. Oh, look at C and D. Those are out of order over there. So this last choice, the number in set A divided by 3 is the number in set B. So A divided by 3 is or equals B. So the correct answer is the last choice, which should be D, but it's C. But we still know that that is the correct answer. Right there. It says C. The number in set A is divided by 3. I'm sorry, the number in set A divided by 3 is the number in set B. Okay, we're going to move on and talk about some place value skills, mainly decimals because we seem to be struggling. Okay, so here's our ones place. It's our 1 unit. Okay, then we're going. Okay, so after our decimal point, we have the tenths place, the hundredths place, and the thousandths place. Okay, so every time you think of a tenth, I want you to think of a rod. This is 1 rod right there, 1. And there are 10 of them to make the whole thing. So a tenth is a rod, and a hundredth is one of these little squares. So when you hear the word hundredth, you're going to think of that little bitty square. Okay, now we are going to look at this area that is shaded blue, and I'm going to count it and I'm going to write a decimal for it. I know that there are 10 in that first row, 10 in this second row, so that's 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. 29 out of the whole 100. So how many rods was that? That was 2 tenths and 9 squares, so that's 29 hundredths. Okay, now I'm going to shade it. I'm going to write a decimal for the shaded part. Okay, that's 3 squares. How many rods do I have? 0. So when I'm writing this, I've got to remember to name that. There are 0 tenths. 0 tenths. And there are 3 squares, so that means there are 3 hundredths. So the answer is 3 hundredths, and that 0 is very important. Okay, I have 3 problems that we are going to do. I want you to write these. Write 8 tenths as a decimal. So I am going to write 8 tenths. Tenths is the first decimal. Okay, that's the first place number. 23 hundredths as a decimal. So I'm going to write decimal point 23. That would be 2 tenths, 2 rods, 3 squares. Okay, this last one, hopefully you're not going to get tricked by it. 6 hundredths. How many tenths are there? There are 0 tenths. And there are 6 squares, 6 hundredths. So 6 hundredths is written like this. You have to say there are 0 tenths. Okay, you are going to have several problems similar to this on your homework tonight. So make sure you use all the strategies that